Could a funeral really destroy my friendships? See the shocking, subtle drama unfold. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Emma, I'm 25, and this is a story that's been gnawing at me for months. It started with something that should have been about family, grief, and support, a funeral in our small town church, but somehow it turned into the beginning of this slow, quiet fracture in my relationships, especially with Anthony, who used to be my best friend. The funeral was for my Aunt Margaret, my dad's sister. She wasn't particularly close to me, but she had been a big part of our extended family. The church was filled with those dark wooden pews that creak if you shift too much, and the air carried that heavy smell of lilies mixed with the wax from too many candles. I sat in the second row with my brother Jack beside me. He's 29, protective in his own way, sometimes too much. Anthony was there too. I invited him. He'd been my best friend since college, and in my head, he was like family. He knew Aunt Margaret had been over for family dinners before, and I thought his presence would be comforting. I didn't realize at the time that inviting him would open the door to everything that followed. At first, it was normal. People in black coats and dark dresses greeted each other softly, a few hugs here and there. The priest began his words about Margaret's kindness and resilience, and I tried to focus, but I kept noticing Anthony, how he seemed almost too casual in the setting. He wasn't disrespectful, but while everyone else sat solemnly, Anthony leaned back, arms folded, like he was enduring a long lecture. After the service, in the church's side hall where coffee and small sandwiches were served, the first ripple appeared. My cousin Linda, who's always been a bit of a watchdog, came up to me with that pinched smile she gets when she's about to say something she shouldn't. "Emma," she whispered, "your friend Anthony, he seems a little out of place here." I brushed it off. "He's just not great with heavy stuff like this." But then Jack added quietly, "She's right. He looks like he'd rather be at a bar than at Aunt Margaret's funeral." I glanced across the room. Anthony was standing near the food table, scrolling on his phone. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just the phone, it was the timing. I walked over. "Hey," I said softly. Anthony looked up, shoved the phone in his pocket. "Sorry, Em, just checking the time." I wanted to believe him, so I nodded and let it slide. But that little moment planted something like the first thread pulling loose on a sweater. The second thread came when people began sharing stories about Aunt Margaret. It wasn't formal, just relatives reminiscing. Jack spoke about how she used to sneak candy to us as kids. Linda talked about Margaret's love of gardening. Then Anthony, to my shock, chimed in loudly. "Remember when she burned that turkey at Thanksgiving? Man, the smoke alarm went crazy, classic." The room went silent for a beat. It wasn't that the memory was wrong, it did happen, but the tone was off. Everyone else was soft-spoken, respectful. Anthony said it like he was a comedy show. I could see my dad's jaw tighten from across the room. Later, as we stood near the church doors watching guests leave, Jack pulled me aside. "Why do you even bring him, Emma? He's acting like he doesn't care." "He does care," I said, defensive. "He just shows it differently." Jack gave me that look, the one that says you're too forgiving. That night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the day. Anthony had been my rock through so many things, breakups, bad jobs, family fights. But at the funeral, I saw this gap between him and my family, between him and me. It was subtle, like a shadow just starting to grow. I told myself it was just one off day. Grief makes people notice flaws more than usual. But looking back, that was the start. The moment when my brother began to doubt Anthony, when my cousins whispered, and when I, for the first time, questioned if Anthony truly belonged in my inner circle. I didn't realize then how far it would go, or how slowly it would unravel. The next few days after the funeral were tense, though not in a way that screamed obvious drama. It was quiet, almost invisible, but every interaction carried this subtle weight that I couldn't shake. Jack kept giving me sideways glances whenever Anthony was around, and even though I tried to ignore it, I could feel the tension in my chest. Anthony, on his part, seemed oblivious, or maybe he was deliberately ignoring it. We met for coffee 2 days after the funeral at that small cafe near my apartment. The one with the mismatched chairs and terrible Wi-Fi that we always complained about but kept coming back to. I wanted to talk about the funeral, to process it with him. Instead, the conversation spiraled into something else entirely. "So, your family," Anthony started, stirring his latte lazily. "They are intense." I blinked. "Intense?" "Yeah, I mean everyone's so serious all the time. Even at the funeral, people were on edge, your brother especially, dude's like a storm cloud." I felt my stomach tighten. I knew Jack could be intense, but to hear Anthony talk about it like some kind of observation, like he was above it, stung. "Anthony, that was my aunt's funeral, people are grieving." He waved a hand dismissively. "I get it, it's exhausting, you know, trying to keep up with everyone's expectations, feels like everyone's waiting for you to mess up." I wanted to tell him that grief isn't a stage to perform on. That it's not about appearances or expectations, it's about respect, memory, connection. But I stopped. I didn't want to fight. Over the next week, I noticed little things that slowly gnawed at me. Anthony would make jokes at the wrong time, sometimes in text, sometimes in front of my family. He didn't mean harm, I knew that, but it was like he was creating a wedge between me and them without even realizing it. Jack, of course, noticed. One evening, while helping me clear out some old boxes in the attic, he finally said what had been simmering. "Emma, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I don't trust him. He's slipping into your life like he owns it, and he's not even trying to connect with us. He doesn't understand family." I sighed, frustrated. "Jack, he is my family, not by blood, but he's been there for me. You think a funeral can define him?" He shook his head. "It's not the funeral, Em, it's everything. Little things. You've changed around him, too. I can see it. You're, I don't know, softer, more defensive. You shouldn't have to defend your best friend like this, not to us." I felt cornered. Jack wasn't wrong, there was a shift in me, one I hadn't acknowledged. I loved Anthony. I trusted him. But suddenly, I was caught between defending him and noticing the cracks he was causing in my family. Then came the invitation that changed everything. My parents were hosting a small post-funeral dinner at our house, just immediate family and a few close friends. I hesitated, but Anthony insisted on coming. Emma, it's not like I'm going to cause a scene, he said, almost pleading. I want to support you, don't leave me out. I agreed, though reluctantly. The night started normally enough. Aunt Margaret's absence hung over the table like a quiet shadow. My dad was quiet, my mum kept dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, and Jack sat directly across from Anthony, his posture stiff. Anthony tried small talk, but every comment felt off. When my Uncle Robert recounted a story about Margaret's garden, Anthony smirked. Bet you would have killed me if I tried planting anything in that yard, he said lightly. The words weren't offensive exactly, but the timing, the tone made the room flinch. Jack shot him a look that could have frozen water. I caught it, tried to intervene. Anthony, it's just a story, relax. But the seed had been planted. That night, I realized the alienation wasn't just my perception, it was real. Anthony and my family weren't connecting, and somehow, in the middle of grief, I was becoming the bridge that didn't quite reach. I went to bed that night with a knot in my chest. I loved my brother. I loved my family. And I loved Anthony. But for the first time, I wondered if loving them all at once was even possible. I didn't know it yet, but the subtle drama of that weekend was only the beginning. The escalation began quietly, almost imperceptibly, over the following week. It wasn't a single explosive argument or a public confrontation, it was a series of small, nagging incidents that kept piling up until I felt trapped in this tension between my brother and Anthony. It started with texts. Jack would send me messages like, "Are you seriously hanging out with him again?" or "I don't get why you're defending him." Anthony, on the other hand, would send long, rambling texts about how my family just didn't get him and how he felt unwelcome. I found myself caught in the middle, trying to reassure both sides, but slowly realizing that no reassurance was working. Then came the family brunch on Sunday. It was meant to be casual, a way to decompress after the funeral and dinner, but the atmosphere was tense. Anthony showed up as I expected, early, and immediately started chatting with my mom in his usual playful, teasing manner. At first, I thought it was harmless, even charming. My mom laughed, but I could see Jack fuming quietly at the other end of the table. "Damn, Jack said under his breath as we grabbed coffee from the counter. "He doesn't belong here, he's trying too hard, and it's weird." I clenched my jaw. "Jack, he's my friend, stop judging him." "I'm not judging him," Jack whispered, though his glare at Anthony said otherwise. "I'm worried about you." I didn't have an answer for that. How could I explain that I trusted Anthony completely, even when it was obvious he didn't mesh with my family? How could I justify a friendship that suddenly felt like a wedge in our family dynamic? The breaking point came during dessert. My Aunt Linda, ever observant, had been telling a story about Aunt Margaret's favorite pie recipe. Everyone was listening quietly when Anthony chimed in with a joke about how Margaret's pies could double as bricks. The room fell silent. My mum's smile folded. Jack's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. I felt heat rising to my face. "Anthony, not now." He looked at me, confusion on his face. "What's if it's just a joke?" I exhaled sharply. "It's not the time, Anthony, you're being insensitive." Jack finally spoke up, his voice low but firm. "Emma, I'm tired of watching him make a mockery of everyone here. Can't you see he's crossing a line?" Anthony's face hardened. "Crossing a line? Seriously? You think I don't care? You think I'm just here to annoy everyone?" The tension in the room was palpable. I felt like I was in a tug of war, the rope being pulled in opposite directions by two people I loved in very different ways. I tried to calm them both, but every word seemed to inflame things further. After dessert, I walked Anthony to the door. "Listen," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I get that my family is intense, but you can't just joke about them during sensitive moments." He shrugged almost dismissively. "And you can't just ignore the fact that they don't like me. I can't pretend anymore, I'm done tiptoeing around everyone." I felt a pang of guilt and sadness. Part of me understood him, I really did, but the other part couldn't shake the feeling that he was slowly drifting away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Later that night, I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I could hear Jack's muffled voice on the phone downstairs, probably talking to my parents about the brunch. My phone buzzed, a text from Anthony, "Maybe we need some space, I can't do this right now." I didn't respond. I just lay there, feeling the distance between us stretch a little more. It wasn't a dramatic explosion, but it was real. It was subtle, quiet, and insidious. The kind of drama that doesn't announce itself with shouts but with silence, mistrust, and growing alienation. And I knew, deep down, that if I didn't figure out a way to navigate this carefully, something precious would be lost. The confrontation didn't happen in a crowded room or with anyone else present. It happened in my small apartment late one night after I finally convinced Anthony to come over. I had spent hours thinking about what to say, how to bridge the gap between him and my family, and mostly, how to salvage the friendship that had been the cornerstone of my adult life. Anthony arrived looking tired, more serious than I'd seen him in years. I offered him coffee, but he shook his head. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, and I knew there would be no small talk this time. I led him to the living room and sat down across from him, keeping my hands clasped together nervously. "Okay, I know things have been rough, but I want to hear what's on your mind, really hear it." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing for a moment before finally sitting down. "You invited me into your family, Emma. You said I'd be fine, but it's like every time I try to connect, I'm met with judgment, with silence, or worse, disdain. I can't be part of this family if they don't even want me here." I felt my throat tighten. "Anthony, it's not that simple. They don't know you like I do. They're grieving. Emotions are raw. Your timing hasn't helped, but that doesn't mean they hate you, and it doesn't mean I don't care about you." He leaned forward, voice low but intense. "But you're defending me so much that it makes you different. You're changing around them, and I see it. You're constantly explaining me, justifying my actions. It's like I don't know, a wedge." I swallowed hard. "A wedge? You're my friend. I care about you, and yes, I defend you because it matters to me that you're treated fairly, but that doesn't mean you're a problem." Anthony shook his head, frustration clear in every line of his face. It feels like Emma, every family dinner, every brunch, every conversation is like walking on a tightrope, and I'm tired of trying not to fall. Silence fell between us. I wanted to argue, to prove him wrong, but I couldn't. I knew he felt alienated. And in a way, I felt the same, caught in the middle, trying to be loyal to both sides, and failing. Finally, I said, Anthony, I don't want to lose you, but I also can't ignore how my family feels. I love them too, and right now I feel like I'm being torn apart trying to make everyone happy. He stared at me, and for a moment I thought we might just sit in that silence forever. Then he stood up, his voice quieter but no less firm. Emma, maybe we need to step back for a while. I don't want to fight, and I don't want to be resented. I just can't keep doing this. I understand, I whispered, though my chest felt heavy, almost like I was being strangled by the weight of it all. I don't want to either, but I also don't want to lose you. He gave a faint, sad smile. We'll see, Emma, maybe space is what we need. I still care about you, but right now this isn't working. And just like that, he left. I stood by the door, feeling the emptiness that had been creeping into our friendship now gaping wide. The apartment felt colder, smaller, like a room that had been drained of warmth. That night, I lay awake thinking about the past weeks, the funeral, the brunch, the comments, the laughter that had turned awkward, the subtle glances, the whispered warnings. Everything had led to this moment. Anthony and I were no longer on the same side of the table, emotionally or physically. I realized then that this subtle, quiet drama had reached its climax not with shouting, not with anger, but with an aching silence and the painful recognition that some gaps, once they start to form, are incredibly difficult to close. And as I drifted into restless sleep, I knew that the next steps, how I navigated family dinners, conversations with Jack, and whether I could repair my friendship with Anthony would define the next chapter of my life. I wasn't sure what that chapter would look like, but I knew it would be different from anything I had imagined. The days after that night were heavy with quiet tension. Anthony didn't reach out, and I didn't call him. It wasn't anger or spite, it was a mutual, unspoken acknowledgement that we both needed space. I found myself drifting toward my family more, leaning on Jack in ways I hadn't before, while also feeling the emptiness left by Anthony's absence. Jack noticed the shift immediately. One evening, as we helped my mom fold laundry in the kitchen, he nudged me gently. Emma, are you okay? I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. I'm managing, Anthony and we needed space, that's for the best right now. Jack nodded, relief flashing in his eyes. I'm glad. I hate seeing you torn between him and us. He's great as a friend, maybe, but family comes first. I wanted to argue to defend Anthony, but I realized Jack wasn't wrong. Family had been my constant, my foundation. And right now, my family needed me and I needed them. The next weekend, my parents invited me and Jack to a small church service in memory of Aunt Margaret. It was a quiet gathering, with candles flickering gently and soft organ music filling the room. I could feel Anthony's absence as a hollow weight on my shoulder, but I focused on my family. On my brother, whose presence was steady and grounding. After the service, Jack and I stayed behind to light a candle for Margaret. We didn't talk much, words felt unnecessary. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and I felt the safety of home, the warmth I had almost forgotten in the turbulence with Anthony. Over the next few weeks, life began to find a rhythm again. I saw my cousins help my mom with errands and even started joining Jack for his morning runs. The small moments, laughing over coffee, helping Dad in the garden, reminded me of what mattered. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Anthony. My heart skipped a beat. Hey Em, I've been thinking, can we talk? I stared at the message, unsure whether to respond. A part of me wanted to run toward him, to fix everything immediately. Another part hesitated, wary of falling back into the same pattern. I typed slowly, yes, let's meet tomorrow. The next day, we met at the park near my apartment, the one with the willow trees and a small pond. Anthony looked different, calmer, more reflective. I'm sorry, Emma, he said quietly. I didn't mean to put you in the middle or to make things harder with your family, I just didn't know how to handle it. I reached out and touched his arm. I know, I get it, I needed to protect my family too, and I didn't want to lose you, but we both needed space to see things clearly. He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. I missed you. I missed you too, I admitted, feeling the tension dissolve slightly. But let's take it slow. We can't rush back into everything like nothing happened. We need boundaries, space, understanding, and patience. He agreed. A deal. We sat on the bench, watching the ducks glide across the pond, the sun casting long golden streaks over the water. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't instant resolution. But it was a start. The first step toward mending something fragile. That night, I called Jack to update him. He was quiet for a moment before saying, I'm glad. Just promise me you'll be careful, Em. Don't lose yourself trying to fix everyone. I promise, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a small measure of peace. I had navigated the storm, learned the limits of compromise, and realized that sometimes healing takes patience, space, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. The subtle drama had tested my loyalty, my emotions, and my sense of balance, but it had also taught me something important about boundaries, trust, and the complexities of human relationships. I wasn't the same Emma who had sat quietly in the church pew at Aunt Margaret's funeral. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to navigate life with both family and friends, even if it meant accepting imperfection along the way. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to a rhythm I could recognize. Anthony and I found a delicate balance. Friendship rebuilt on the careful foundation of mutual respect and understanding. We still laughed, still shared moments that reminded me why he had been my best friend for so long, but now there was awareness and understanding of the boundaries we needed, both with my family and with each other. I noticed subtle changes in myself, too. I was more patient, more attuned to the nuances of relationships, and more willing to confront uncomfortable feelings rather than let them fester. The funeral, the brunch, and the confrontation with Anthony had been a crucible, testing not only my friendships but also my own emotional resilience. I had learned that sometimes love isn't about blind loyalty, it's about balance, honesty, and the courage to acknowledge when things aren't working. Jack and I grew closer during this period. The strain between Anthony and my family had inadvertently forced me to lean on my brother in ways I hadn't before. He became my sounding board, my safe space to process feelings, and our bond deepened. One night, while sitting on a porch and sipping iced tea, I said to him, "Jack, thank you for pushing me when I needed it, even when I didn't see it." He shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Someone had to. You were too caught up in trying to fix everything for everyone else. You needed to focus on yourself too." That hit me harder than I expected. I realized how much I had been bending, adjusting, and sacrificing my own emotional needs to manage the delicate dance between Anthony and my family. That subtle alienation I had felt, the sense of being stretched in two directions, wasn't just about Anthony. It was also about me learning to navigate my own boundaries and emotional limits. I also learned to see Anthony in a new light. He wasn't careless or uncaring, he just had a different way of processing situations and expressing himself. Our confrontation had been painful, but it forced both of us to communicate honestly and set the terms for how our friendship could survive future challenges. I began to appreciate the importance of dialogue, of confronting issues before they grow into a manageable distance. One evening, months later, we attended a quiet family gathering together. Anthony was still a little nervous, and my family was cautious, but the atmosphere was calmer. We shared stories, laughed softly, and I noticed Jack giving Anthony a subtle nod of acknowledgement. That small gesture felt monumental. It was a sign that patience, honesty, and effort could mend what had seemed fractured beyond repair. Sitting there, I reflected on the entire chain of events. It hadn't been explosive or dramatic in a sensational sense. There were no yelling matches or public humiliations. Instead, it had been quiet, insidious, and slow, the type of drama that creeps in under the radar, eroding relationships without obvious warning. But in that subtle, almost invisible tension, I had discovered the limits of patience, the importance of boundaries, and the value of honest confrontation. I realized that life is full of these quiet storms. They don't always announce themselves with a bang. Sometimes, the most significant conflicts are the ones that happen in whispers, sideways glances, and the spaces between words. And navigating them requires not only care for others but also care for oneself. Anthony and I didn't emerge untouched, but we emerged stronger. My family didn't fully understand him at first, but with time, patience, and small gestures, they grew to respect him, and not necessarily for fitting perfectly into our family dynamic, but for honoring our friendship and showing willingness to engage respectfully. Looking back, I see that the funeral wasn't just a moment of grief, it was the catalyst for growth. It revealed the fragility and complexity of human relationships and taught me that gradual alienation can be just as painful as explosive conflict, but also that recovery is possible when honesty, patience, and empathy guide your actions. Now, when I think about that weekend in the church and the weeks that followed, I no longer feel that knot in my chest. Instead, I feel quiet pride. I faced a subtle, emotional storm and emerged more aware, more compassionate, and more capable of navigating the messy, beautiful complexity of family and friendship. I learned that love, whether familial or platonic, isn't always seamless. Sometimes it's a slow dance, full of missteps, silences, and misunderstandings. But when you show up, listen, and stay true to both yourself and the people you care about, those missteps can lead to a rhythm that is stronger and more meaningful than before. And that, I suppose, is what I'll carry with me through all future family dinners, awkward gatherings, and quiet storms in my friendships. I've learned to navigate the subtle drama, and I've grown stronger for it.